My name is Kevin McMahon. I'm here sitting with Ellie Householder, that's running for city clerk in Antioch. Could you tell us a bit about yourself today?
Hi, thank you so much for inviting me to come talk with you today, Kevin. So, my name is Ellie Householder. I've been in Antioch my entire life. I grew up, went into Antioch schools. I graduated from Prospects at the tender age of 16, which was early, and I graduated around the Great Recession. So, that really shaped kind of my view and my passion and what I decided to do with my career. And so after graduating, I went to community college for a long time. And then I graduated or transferred to UC Berkeley, graduated from Cal in 2016, worked for the school district. And then just this last May, I actually finished my master's in public policy from the Goldman School of Public Policy. So
That's awesome. Glad that you finished that up finally. Can you tell me what a city clerk does? I don't think a lot of people actually really know.
yeah, I know. And it is kind of like a funky elected office that a lot of people don't know, which is almost ironic because of what they do. So the
Mhm.
city clerk is really the elections official in your community. And so the way I kind of like to think about where the city clerk fits into the overall municipal governance is like what we call in public policy the three P's. So there's process, there's policy, and there's planning, right? And so you have your city planner as being the person who kind of carries out the policies that the city council sets. And then what the city clerk does is that they make sure that procedurally you're doing everything that you're supposed to. And so that means that we're following the Brown Act. That means that we're keeping accurate records. That means that, we're just making sure that we're adhering to, local ordinances, state and federal ordinances.
Okay. What made you decide to run for city clerk?
I think the reason I decided to run for city clerk is because when I was really sitting and thinking about what I'm passionate about and what I want to be able to do in my community, I realized that everything that I cared about, whether it was, climate justice, whether it was racial equality, whether it was more opportunities for our businesses, it all coalesced around the ability to engage in our civic life here in Antioch, whether that's voting, whether that's attending city council meetings, whether that's, joining a committee or a board. And so I really felt like the city clerk position has the ability to make civic life more accessible for all residents. And I ultimately think that that's what, I care about because the more people that get involved, I think the more ideas we have and we could kind of build our community together.
Awesome. How will you vary in your position compared to your predecessor?
So, I mean, I think that the fact that we don't know what a city clerk is, I think is kind of the biggest red flag to me because my predecessor has been in that position for a long time, and so there's a real lack of visibility. So I think that that's really the first very distinct divergence from the current incumbent right now. I think that when we're thinking back to this triangle of the three P's of public policy and government, you want to have somebody that you could trust who's looking over to make sure that we're crossing our T's and dotting our I's, right? But if
Hmm.
you don't know who that person is, how can you trust them? And so for me, I really want to be able to get out into the community more. I want to engage with people that maybe haven't previously been engaged with. And I just want people to understand how government works so that they can understand how they can affect change and how their government can work for them. So really, yes, it's an administrative role. There's things that I'm going to have to check off, signatures that I'm going to have. We know that. But it doesn't just have to be an administrative role. It could be a lot more than that. And I have a vision and a plan, I think, to be able to carry that out.
I like your ideas of engagement because a lot of things for the city go through the city clerk. I don't
Mhm.
know a lot of people know that. So the next question I have for you is, can you describe your approach to recording and maintaining a large amount of data?
So I have a public policy master's degree. And so I have a lot of experience working with like ACS, the American Community Service data, like really, really large data sets with thousands and thousands of data points. Really a lot of Excel. Even like big tech companies like Oracle and stuff, they still use Excel. And so really my kind of management with data and, preserving data sets is a lot of Excel. And, there's a lot of different kind of like technological security checks that you can have, zipping things, making sure they're password protected, making sure that whatever cloud services you're using are secure, things like that. So
Awesome. Last question I have for you today is, can you share an example of where you effectively prepared ordinances for record distribution purposes?
because that's one of the functions of the city clerk, right? So if, the city council is talking about passing, a zoning ordinance for a certain type of business, they have the conversation about it, but the city clerk's actually the one to draft that up. And so I haven't, because I've not been a city clerk before, had direct experience with that. But I've actually worked at every single level of government. I've worked for local government, I've worked for county, state, and federal. And so a lot of what we do is that type of like widespread communication. So maybe the director of the Health and Human Services Agency, which is where I currently work, wants to come out with a new kind of guidelines on a particular policy that we oversee. So, you write it up, you go through the vetting process in terms of working with your legal counsel, making sure it goes up the chain of command, and then back, it kind of does this like kind of back up and back down. And then ultimately, you're the one that kind of keeps that, whether it's on like your local, locally stored on your computer, whether it's cloud based. And so, in that respect, like I hope that makes sense, that like I've done it before, but it's just not in an ordinance. And so, but it's effectively the same thing. It's an official government document that says what the government is going to do, which is what an ordinance is, that people can then reference. And so another thing too that I noticed that people don't talk about, at least in our current city government, is making things ADA accessible. And so that's something I also have experience in. So not only do I know how to draft up these types of legal documents, make sure they're legally sound, I know who it goes to, working with the city attorney, but also making sure that when we post that ordinance, that it's not a scanned PDF, which unfortunately I've seen a lot of on our city website. So making sure that that document is accessible so that anybody with different ability levels can access that document.
Exactly. So it would be so hard for the elderly or other people to look
Yeah.
at it. I know I have trouble with PDFs myself sometimes. So I do want to do one more question, because you did mention it earlier that your main priority as the city clerk is an election official. How do you feel about the election process right now in COVID terms? I know that it's not thing in your power to do so right now, but what would you go about doing it if you were?
Yeah. So actually, there's a lot of opportunity in this pandemic to kind of reshape and rethink how local elections officials carry out their elections in their municipalities. And Governor Gavin Newsom has actually signed a bunch of executive orders, basically trying to empower elections clerks across the state to be able to. The big thing that's actually just came down recently within the last couple of days is allowing elections clerks to start counting ballots before election night. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's actually very interesting and a very potentially impactful way to calculate votes and tally, because everything's going to be vote by mail now, right? And so to be able to, kind of start, yeah, exactly, right? And so there's different things like that. I mean, I think that communication is a big thing that I haven't seen a lot of. I've seen it from our county elections office. They've been awesome at putting out information, but we have 2 ballot drop-off boxes, for example, in Antioch. So making sure that folks have access to those, and that we have programs like, say you're somebody that doesn't have transportation or have limited mobility, how are then you making sure that your ballot is counted and it's getting to where it needs to be in a timely fashion. So there's a lot of opportunity with the pandemic. I think that this is the time now more than we've ever seen, at least in my lifetime, there's a blank canvas. There's so much potential, and there's so many people who are willing to rethink and reimagine what these systems look like to make them more efficient. Because I've said it before, we shouldn't have voter turnout that's only 40%. We should have voter turnout that's 100% of people who are eligible to vote. And so making it easier for folks to vote is the first step. And there's a lot of different ways we could do that. So thank
Awesome.
you for bringing up that question too.
Oh, you're welcome. Anything you want to close with or plug?
I mean, if folks want to know more information about me, they could go to my website, elliehouseholder.com. I would love to talk with you more. I know some people like to really get into the specifics and the weeds. I have thoroughly enjoyed brainstorming and imagining with folks. But also, if you feel like I still don't know what your position is, I would love to talk with you about that as well. And, I hope that you'll vote for me this November. But at the very least, I think that if we're more informed about who our electeds are and what they do and what they can do, I think that that's going to benefit everybody, regardless of the outcomes of this election. So
Thank you for joining me today. I wish you good luck on your election.
yay. Thank you so much, Kevin. I really appreciated it.
Awesome.
All right, bye.